are very happy to have you in the virtual room with us this afternoon and hope you'll find the session insightful and informative as we go on with our different presenters. These Bertha Centre collectives happen every month, and every month we have a different topic and different speakers in each session with varying topics covered. So please do look out for further collectives in the future. And you can also view past recordings on the Bertha Centre YouTube channel, and the team will also share the link to that channel in the chat shortly. After this collective session, we will also send up a wrap-up email, which would include a recording of the session and also recommended readings on the topic that we're covering today. So without further ado, I want to kick off the session today just to get an idea of the people in the room and the feelings and sentiments of people in the room. So we'll be doing a interactive word cloud. So we want to know today, seeking funding, can be challenging because, and if you could pop the reasons that you're experiencing on the word cloud that has been dropped off in the chat on the Menti platform. I think we'll give that about 2 minutes just for everyone to get a chance to access the link and drop their thoughts in there, and we'll share the screen so we can have a look at everyone's thoughts. Okay, thank you to everybody who's already plugged into the Menti platform. If you haven't, like I said, you can access the Menti link in the chat. And so far, we've got a couple that are quite interesting. So mismatches between actual startups or entrepreneurs and funders, transparency of different processes between the funders, just accessing the available funds and finding information on the funds that are available out there. See it's moving as we're going. So building relationships takes time. That's very true. Competition for funds, definitely constraints in funds for enterprises overall, but specifically social enterprises is quite important. Lack of collateral, yes. In a lot of cases, perhaps enterprises don't have collateral that is a necessity for application to only be considered, let alone get access to the funds. Risk aversion is another one that's coming out there. Network, unqualified persons. So yeah, a very, very broad range of issues that people are experiencing, and it seems like a lot of overlap as well. Competition coming up a couple of times, for example. Who to ask is a good one. I think be linked up to networks as well and access to networks. So very, very interesting. And I think it's good that we have a good frame of the issues that people are experiencing or seeing so far. And I hope we will be able to address that as the session carries on. So to kick things off, we're going to start with a video. Unfortunately, one of our presenters couldn't be with us live today, but he has been very kind to record a video that we'll be putting up on the screen shortly. Frank is a Bertha Scholar at the GSB at UCT, and he is an engineer turned social entrepreneur. He's one of the co-founders for Limkani, a South African-based insurance technology, and he founded Limkani after his engineering thesis on developing low-cost solutions to informal settlement fires and the devastation that causes. Limkani, the technology creates safe and resilient communities for underserved people and reducing risk and inequalities in these spaces. So we will be sharing that video on the screen, but we will also, in case there is a lag or an issue on your side, we'll share the link to the video, as well as some information on Limkani as well. I've just gotten a note to say that our tech support behind the scenes are experiencing some load shedding, so maybe that's a constraint we can add to raising funding in South Africa. So give us a couple of minutes just to get that video up. But yeah, I can tell you a bit more about Lonkani and Frank. So the technology through the tech in helping informal or fires in informal settlements, the impact that it has is reducing those inequalities and hopefully promoting inclusive growth as well. They also developed the world's first fire insurance and fire detection bundle product for informal homeowners, and is actually underwritten by Hollard. And as of August of this year, they have over 8,000 customers for their fire detector and fire insurance bundle product, which covers over 320 million rand of informal property in South Africa. So they've progressed really well, and I think the lessons that Frank is going to share with us in the video will be quite useful and insightful for entrepreneurs in the room or people who are working with entrepreneurs who might be able to share these insights through their ecosystems or through their networks after the session. I'm going to check if we're ready to share that video.
Based in Cape Town, Johannesburg in South Africa. And yeah, I'm here to tell you a little bit more about our journey with how we raised capital over the years, how we got funding to start our business, and kind of where that's led us today. So I guess a little bit on what we do and where we came from and where we're at today. We started our journey trying to deal with the challenge of informal settlement fires, particularly in South Africa, this massive devastating event that takes, in the worst case, tens of thousands of homes in a single fire event. And it's something that was really moving and really critical for us, that we felt we urgently had to deal with. And me and a group of founders worked together to develop two ways in which we tackle this challenge of informal settlement fires. The first is an early warning fire detection system that creates a community-wide call to action in the event of a fire. It's a unique system in the way that it links all of the homes in a neighborhood, so that when there's a fire in one home, all of the neighbors can find out, and even if people are away at work or elsewhere, they can get an SMS to let them know that there's a fire either in their neighbor's home, or it'll even let them know if there's a fire inside of their own home specifically. And we rolled that out and proved the impact it created in limiting the spread of fires. With this, we went to Hollard, the largest private insurer in South Africa, and partnered with them to develop a world first bundled fire insurance product with this piece of risk reducing technology, this Lonkani fire detection system. And with it, we were able to offer people a means of recovering after the devastation of fire, having the finances they need to rebuild, even in the worst case scenario where fire actually occurs. And so we've got these two major ways. One, through a financially inclusive product that's affordable, suitable, relevant, flexible in all the ways it needs to be, to really service the needs of our customers. And the same way, this piece of technology that's been specifically designed for informal homes to deal with the challenge of fire. At the moment, we've got our fire detectors in over 50,000 homes around South Africa. They've been rolled out into about 2,500 homes in Bangladesh and a few hundred homes in Kenya. Pilot projects for the future of our business, where hopefully we'll be able to expand in future. And at the moment, we've got 9,000 customers around South Africa who are covering themselves against the risk of fire in informal homes. For us, we're really excited basically at having these two major models. On one side, we're able to roll out systems of fire detectors into communities so that a whole community can get the benefit of a fire detection system. At the same time, if we can't find the grant funder or the corporate funder or the other funder to provide people with this free detection system, people can cover themselves, and people can actually pay. It costs 70 Rand a month now, and people get up to 40,000 Rand of cover for their home and contents, as well as this fire detection system and SMSs in the event of fire. So it's been quite a journey. We're sitting today at just over 250 employees, based in Cape Town and Johannesburg, and quite wild, honestly, to sit here and talk about the journey of funding over the years, because When we started out, it was an idea. It started off as an engineering thesis I did back in 2012 to design a low-cost solution to informal settlements, and I really could never, ever, ever imagine that 10 years later I'd be talking about something that's actually made its way into the world and had a lot of the impact we dreamed of, and has resulted in a business that not only is continuing to create value in communities and do the work we hoped, but it's also employing people in our communities. So I mentioned the large base of people working for us, and the majority of them are agents who work in our communities, and we hire women from the communities we work in who are our sales agents who go around and actually provide people access to buy our insurance and fire detector bundled product. So there's many different ways in which we've grown and changed over the years, but we're very, very fortunate, and I think incredibly privileged and very lucky as I look back on the funding journey to have, at the right points in the journey, found the capital necessary and the right people around us necessary and the right partners and stakeholders to make it all possible. And I'll tell you a little bit about that funding journey and how we got there. I'll try hopefully give you a few insights, even though I think it's a very personalized journey as always. And yeah, any other advice and key learnings we've had along the way. So when we first began Lumkani, we began building it without, necessarily much capital. We started designing the product and working with our community that we'd engage with through an NGO who wanted to assist us in getting, the solution built. We were really lucky to have amazing community partners. We worked with the community organization resource center called Cork and Slumdwellers International. And they were great partners in the early phases, and they end up being a little piece of the journey on funding as well. So that's why I bring them up. But in the start of 2014, we got a grant from the Technology Innovation Agency, which gave us our first capital to get off the ground, allow us to, invest in our first manufacturing runs of this new technology, actually run a pilot in community and partner with people to get this tech into the homes that we wanted to. And that was really the first catalyst. At the same time, we were working actually through the UCT GSB. We entered the Student Social Venture Program, which took us to eventually the finals in Berkeley, California, to pitch for this social enterprise capital. We won a small amount of money there, but every little bit made a difference at the start there. And then, we continued to get a lot of social enterprise competitions, apply for them. There are quite a lot of energy and effort. You pitch at competitions. You have to invest a lot of your time in sometimes getting your name out there so that people will vote for you and all the rest of that. But an amazing source of capital. There's a huge amount of funding out there in social enterprise competitions, especially for early stage companies and ideas to kind of get off the ground. So we were quite lucky. The SAB Foundation in South Africa, we got a small grant from. We won things through Western Cape Government Premier Entrepreneurship Recognition Awards and through something called the Better Living Challenge. And we were just sourcing money wherever we could to try and get the stuff off the ground. At the same time, once we first launched a product, we started finding our first customers in NGOs. Cork is the one that I mentioned before, who were looking to protect the communities that they worked with against this risk of fire. And so we started finding our first customers to roll out a whole detection system. And as soon as we had data that proved the impact and stories of fires being stopped in our communities, we started recording those, and getting the data and the stories out there were so important for us in the early stages. It's gone so quiet since then, actually, but we put so much energy into PR and media and just trying to speak at a conference or at a TEDx or something to talk a little bit about our journey and to get the word out there about what Lumkani was doing. That helped us a huge amount because it gave us a lot of connections. There was something called the Tech Awards in the US where we got additional capital at the time. And really we were bootstrapping, finding these little bits of capital, finding a customer here and there to roll out a system of fire detectors and get off the ground in that way. And then we ran this project with Hollard and originally the city of Johannesburg, but they pulled out, not important details for you. We delivered this first example of a business model where it wasn't reliant just on waiting for a funder or a corporate to come along, but one where we could offer the value of something really important like the financial support in the event of fire, combined with a model that we could expand and reach customers without having to wait for funders. And with that, we went out and looked to raise investment capital. We'd put so much energy and effort into funded projects and getting competitions and social enterprise competitions and doing all of this incredible amount of effort and work. But really, we were really fortunate to have access to all of that and really privileged to have access through the networks at the GSB, as well as the ones that we developed over the years in all these different competitions to get as far as we did. But at a certain stage in the journey, it makes, in our world at least, it made a lot of sense to stop trying to get bit pieces of small capital in here and there, but actually to bring partners on board who would, in our case, take on equity from the business, and in exchange for that equity, they would actually give us the funding we needed to expand and grow. And so we were very fortunate to work with three fantastic early stage investors, two from South Africa and one from America. And we got our first funding round together in 2018. At the same time, we worked with something called the GSMA on a large project that had a very large fund, which allowed us to roll up to 20,000 homes, prove a lot more of our model. At the same time, we got all this amazing data and insights into kind of a real study on our impact, which again was a very powerful document to find further funders and further partners along the way. And we use that to kind of expand the business and continue to grow it. And from there, we stopped working a lot on social enterprise competitions and even started to reduce the amount of grants we were looking for, because we really wanted to prove a business case that what we were doing was scalable and wouldn't have to always rely on other funding, but that we could do this without that additional capital coming in. And so we used kind of this grant-funded project and the investment we got to scale up the work. I think at the time we had about 300 customers when we got our first investment round. And yeah, we used that along with these grant projects that we ran, funded by the GSMA, and eventually got a really large award from the European Innovation Council in 2020 during the heart of COVID, and have since gone on to raise another capital round and brought in other investors into the business to expand what we're doing, and hopefully we'll not have to search for too much capital for too much longer and reach break even in the next kind of 18 months to 2 years, after which we can obviously source more capital to really try and expand, or we'll just maintain our operations as needed, so that we can try and reach a really good scale in the future. So that's a little bit of the journey. That's how we got here. I think there were a lot of critical moments inside of it that were really fortunate, and at the same time, I think we got really good at searching for funding partners, learning their language, learning the way in which funders want you to speak, what the critical points are that they want to see. And at different stages, you become more and more eligible for the larger amounts of funding. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of an overview, a slightly long one. The thing that I would suggest if I was to give some level of, I guess, advice, because raising funding is stressful. There were numerous points in our journey where we were days away from running out of money, and it's incredibly hard to be in that position, especially with employees and everything else. It's an intense journey, but a rewarding one. And so it's definitely not easy. I speak about it as if it all happened, but it was very close a few times to us not having the opportunity to continue what we were doing. So I think we were very fortunate at numerous points in time. But yeah, we had some amazing partners as well that assisted us in doing it. A few of the key learnings. I think you've got to look for capital that's appropriate for where you're at. At the start of your journey, finding social enterprise competitions, small amounts of capital, there's so many of these sorts of examples where people are willing to take a bet on you with just an idea or just a prototype or maybe the first customer feedback or a video that's out there in the world, and you develop some momentum. So finding these sorts of competitions are also really good because they help you to cycle through your business model. And then forget pitching our business, coming out of that, and then talking to the people we're working with and being like, I didn't feel good in that competition. We need to improve things. And it genuinely improved our business ideas. So really good. Those competitions, I think, are really valuable to develop your ideas, build your concepts, um, learn how to present them in a formal way that gets through all your major points. It's going to be something you have to do for the rest of your journey. And yeah, so I think that those are, I think genuinely think they're really valuable, but they are very time consuming. So appropriate in the early stages, but eventually become harder and harder to maintain. Finding obviously a customer who's willing to purchase your goods is really valuable if you have the sort of product where you could maybe run different business models. I've seen a lot of companies find success by having more of a project-based model in the early phases where you can get, new technological systems or new services installed as a project for a specific larger organization. At the same time as kind of building maybe the more sustainable long-term vision. That really assisted us. So that would be another piece of advice. A big thing is to find the right newsletters and opportunity desks. So I remember there's something called Opportunity Desk, there's something called NGO Pulse, something else called an Innovation Exchange. These are all websites where I would go and scour the world of grants and funded projects. I got on so many newsletters. Andy, the Aspen Institute, what's it called? Aspen Department of Entrepreneurship, whatever it is, it's called ANDE. They have a monthly newsletter which covers a whole bunch of opportunities inside of that sector. You've got to also find things for your sector. So we would look for emergency scenarios, fire events, smart technology, IoT, and then I would literally have all of these Google alerts for grant funding, et cetera, that would send me emails automatically when a news article was released about a specific fund. And at the same time would be on all these different newsletters to try and get as much information. And to this day, I still look at those because I think they're really valuable. And on occasion, we found the right opportunity and thing to scale. But like I said, it is about finding the right opportunity for your stage. At some point in time, finding investment capital can be really valuable. Mentorship there is really incredible. There's a lot of accelerators out there that, again, find something correct for your space, but there's a lot of accelerator programs. We never really went through too many in our early stages. Funnily enough, later on in our journey, when we were looking for more investment partners, we used to use the accelerators to connect us to new potential investors because they'll generally have a wide range of networks. So that's one way of building your network. But beyond that, it is really an incredible networking game, which I found really difficult along the journey. I would never say it's my talent or my nature or anything like that. But just connecting through the Graduate School of Business originally when I first was a student there, and after a while starting to go to events, speak at conferences, and just always seeing the value of that connection, speaking to somebody, finding that next opportunity in the pipeline to grow. And then as you get to kind of the later stages, you start to see that once you've got a little bit of proof behind the work that you're doing, proof of your impact, proof of the ways in which what you've created. And I think so valuable to try and through some of the early stage funding, even though it's all about just like getting a project there, getting the money in, getting the ability to continue. But if you can start to build, if you could get a study done which shows the impact of your work, it's so powerful for the next potential funder to see. Because funders all want to see, when I give you money, reliably will I get the outcome that we're hoping to achieve. And for the funder, it's about the impact you're going to create. It's about you reaching some level of profitability, but they want to see the number of homes you're going to affect or the number of people who will be impacted. And if you can somehow prove that through studies or either third party or just even with partners that can show the impact you're creating, it's far more likely that you'll be able to find other accesses to capital. I've rambled for a long time. I hope some of it's been useful. I probably have spoken for a little bit too long, but nonetheless, I hope it's helped. And yeah, I would really recommend reaching out to your networks, getting on as many newsletters as you can, and finding that first fund, finding that first small project, capital. There's something called the D Prize for early stage startups. There's a lot of opportunities out there. It's a Google game a lot of the time, and then it's about with time building networks to get further opportunities. I hope that's been useful, and yeah, wishing you all the best of luck, and I really hope that whatever your impactful idea is, you manage to get the capital necessary to test it out and prove that it create the value that you hope it can. And yeah, we're really fortunate and grateful to have gotten this far, and yeah, by grace and by a lot of assistance by other people, and definitely a lot of hard work too. We've managed to kind of scale what we're doing to a level. But I think in the end, the value of your work hopefully will speak most loudly. Us actually doing and creating the impact that we hoped to create, I think is really the reason why we're still here in all of those very tenuous moments where maybe we weren't going to get the capital to continue. The fact that we were doing something meaningful really speaks to people, and getting that story and getting that message out there is really valuable. Okay, I'll stop talking now. Wishing you all the best. Cheers. Bye.
Great. I hope everyone found that as insightful and interesting as I did. There's so many gems and golden nuggets that Frank shared. Just for me, one thing that I think was very important that he highlighted was looking for capital that is suited to where you're at in the stage of your business. So moving from grants and competitions to investment capital as you're growing is key. And then eventually scaling. The importance of just keeping your ear on the ground and making sure that you know about what info is out there. So, for example, the newsletters, like you mentioned, Google Alerts, and I think the Bertha Centre newsletter is also quite useful for that. We share opportunities and funding opportunities. So if you aren't signed up to that, please do check that out for opportunities on funding and accelerators and incubators. And then another key thing that I think you mentioned a couple of times and it's so important is making sure that you are aware of the impact that you're creating and that you're able to document and prove that to funders. Like we said, it was key in landing the Hollard deal and makes investors comfortable and happy to take on that, to provide you with funding if they know that you're not only financially sound, but that you are actually doing good and can prove and show that you're doing good. Yeah, I see there's a couple of requests for recording. It will be shared with everyone after the session in a wrap-up mail, so you don't have to worry about that. Without further ado, I want to introduce our next speaker, Hutiri. He's also originally an engineer and then turned entrepreneur by choice. Chasing purpose and meaning and impact. He's the founder of a social enterprise called Technovera, focusing on developing inclusive technologies in the public healthcare space. They developed a tech called Pillowbox, which he will share more about, I'm sure, in his presentation. But it is a smart locker system that allows patients to get their chronic medication in under 30 seconds instead of waiting in long lines and queues. But I'll hand over to Neo to tell us a bit more about his journey.
Okay, sorry about that. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join this session. And I would really love if you can help drive my slides. I'm joining from my mobile, if that's fine. Yeah, I guess maybe from a background perspective, I guess I walked this journey very much on similar to Francois on wanting to create meaning and impact. I just want to check if my
Neo, I think you're back on mute.
Yes, I was just checking if you are able to share my slides.
I believe so. Yes, we'll do so shortly.
We'll do so shortly.
You can carry on with your intro, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe just picking from that intro. Yeah. So by by undergrad, similar to Francois, went the route of doing engineering from University of Cape Town. I had the fortune of going directly into manufacturing. So I worked for a steel manufacturing company out of Saldanha, then moved to Gauteng, in particular in the Vaal, and worked in steel manufacturing.
Hi, Neil. Did we lose you?
Okay, I think everywhere have we lost Neil? Shall we move on to the panel discussion and then circle back to that? Great, so we're very, very fortunate to have two Bertha Scholars joining us this afternoon as part of our panel discussion. And I want to introduce Yusuf Sisenga, who's a Bertha Scholar doing his MPhil in Inclusive Innovation at the GSB GCT. He's an independent consultant specializing in youth and social entrepreneurship, and was involved in the founding of Team Academy, which is a learning by doing program at the University of Iringa in Tanzania, which was ranked among the 100 most entrepreneurial universities in the world, largely due to the innovative program that he was a part of founding. He is committed to contributing and towards solving challenges in education, environment, agriculture, and employment using existing resources with innovation. I'd also like to introduce Mika, who is also a Bertha Scholar. He is passionate about the potential of entrepreneurs in contributing towards systemic change within the communities. And he also is has the privilege of serving as the youth SME and entrepreneurship pillar lead at one of the big four consultancy firms. And in the spirit of the Bertha Scholars, he's excited to explore models that challenge the status quo and empower social innovators across the continent. And last but not least, I can't see him on the screen. Rina, if you could put your camera on. Rina is the Chief Operations and Technology Officer of a social enterprise called Africanize, which also recently won an award from the SED Foundation as part of the Innovation Awards for Development Award. Africanize supports small-scale kitchens with delivery support and value chain solutions, and he originally has a financial background, working in insurance, investment planning, and so forth. And he enjoys talking about having good social impact across the board. Okay, I'd like to kick off with Mika and Yusuf. Maybe you could do a brief introduction of where you are and what some of the challenges that you've faced either as a social entrepreneur in the different innovations that you've worked with, and also from a perspective where in your different roles in a consultancy role so far. Can we start with Mika?
Okay, great. Thank you, Kirsten. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here. Always a pleasure to engage with the Bertha Centre. I think wonderful presentation by Francois. I think maybe says everything that we might discuss here. I think for me, I would want to take this opportunity maybe to just speak from the perspective of someone who's had the privilege of being engaged in two continental projects recently that has looked at the ecosystem of trying to finance young entrepreneurs, right? And I think some of the things that we've seen there are very relevant to social entrepreneurs as well. So I think maybe to start with, I would just want to highlight the first thing that really stood out in terms of people who would look at as young entrepreneurs look at seeking financing, right? You know, I think we saw that financiers have a very, very risk-averse attitude towards entrepreneurs, right? And maybe even more so towards social entrepreneurs, because it's not something that maybe they truly understand, right? So you realize a lot of the people when they're trying to get off the ground and that are looking to source for funding, you know, the lens through which some of the financiers look look at you through is not always a conducive one to entrepreneurs, particularly maybe people who are starting and growing their businesses. And I think that's why I liked what Francois was saying, that it is important maybe to identify those institutions or those organizations that can finance you based on the level of business that you are at. Yeah. That are open to understanding and appreciating the risks that you face at that particular phase of your business journey, and will probably be willing to walk that journey with you. Because I think which leads to maybe the other stressful thing that Francois might have alluded to. Sometimes if you get the funding from the wrong type of funder, it gives you unnecessarily more pressure than you need, whereas maybe you're at a stage where you need to focus on proving that model, right? So I think I'm happy to stop there, Carsten, by just highlighting that first main challenge, that there's always that big risk aversion whenever it comes to financing entrepreneurs, because the established institutions that are there are currently looking at entrepreneurs through a very conventional lens, which is not necessarily very appropriate for entrepreneurs.
Absolutely, and I like what you said about putting yourself under unnecessary pressure. But if you're going to finance opportunities that may not be best suited to where you are in your business journey, I'd like to put the same question to Yusuf. What are some of the challenges that you faced as an entrepreneur yourself, and also perhaps what you've observed from a different viewpoint in your role as a consultant?
Yeah, thanks, Justin, and good to be here this evening. So a very brief background about me. You've mentioned I'm a consultant and I've worked with the university, but I actually spent a big part of like my life working with RR Labs, Tanzania. And so I have had a lot of like experience, working with starting RR Labs Tanzania from scratch to where it is now. And of course, I've had like lots of challenges, but also like many things that I've learned in the process. And so RR Labs operates as an NGO, not purely like a social enterprise that is making money, but like an NGO. And I think there's one point that both the two speakers have mentioned. Funding from a wrong funder can be really a big challenge. And I think I've observed this at our labs, but also in other organizations that I consult with. Sometimes we go for the wrong funders and they put a lot of pressure on you. And sometimes you cannot really like make them happy. So in the process, you might actually digress and start to kind of fulfill their mission, not the mission of the enterprise that you started. So I have observed this to be a challenge. Yeah, but I think for me, one of the things that the advice I would like to give to social entrepreneurs is to start where you are, start with what you have. Because sometimes I've met entrepreneurs who kind of always like they're waiting for capital, they're waiting for funding, instead of starting with what they have. Personally, my philosophy is, and the philosophy of our labs, the philosophy of Team Academy, where I currently work, is start with what you have. And then funders will pick interest in what you do, and then they will bring the funds. So sometimes we focus so much on the money, actually, but I think we need to expand this concept of funding. That's not just about money. It's about, sometimes we have people in our communities who have skills, who have ideas, who have a lot to contribute. And I think as we look at this concept of funding, we need to also look at all these resources around us and not only money. So I think sometimes we have a challenge, like how do you mobilize all these resources and, kind of to do what you want to do, to really like get your goal achieved. And but for me, my observation, my experience shows that if you can mobilize those resources, the funding, the cash now will find you along the way. So let me stop there for now.
Thanks, Yusuf. It's definitely very insightful, and yeah, it's not only about funding, but the support and networks and communities as well. I'd like to welcome Tina to the panel as well, and I'm going to go straight into it with you, Tina. I think there were a lot of similarities in the presentation that Frank gave, where he started out with awards and competitions and going through that in the earlier stages with the journey that you've gone through with Africanize. So from your experience, in your opinion, what do you think has made you successful, or the key elements that made you stand out in those environments? And what have you, in that journey, what have been your key learnings that you think would help the people in the room today?
Okay, Kirsten, that's a very heavy question. Hey everyone, my name is Tina of Fresh. I work as the Chief Technology and Operations Officer for Africanize. We are a small-scale delivery. We are a small-scale platform for vendors doing delivery support in Cape Town, Joburg, Durban, and hopefully across maybe Africa one day. Kirsten, I think what Francois said in the beginning is that you just first need to find these competitions, right? This means that you just have to have someone in your team, or yourself if you don't have a team, dedicated to just trolling the internet for these things, right? Obviously, we know the big fishes. There's always going to be competitions at UCT. There's always going to be competitions now with DHET, Department of Higher Education. There's going to be things like SAP. So you need to first establish the ecosystem of the funders and the competitions. Establish that and realize that even if you miss a deadline for this year, you can actually start now to prep for next year. So you just have that dedicated team. I think what sets us apart at Africanize in terms of that is that we're just ready. You just prepare. You just put in the work. The applications are lengthy. They're meant to sort of like weed out the people that are not serious. So you need to sit down and fill out the application process over days, weeks, even months sometimes, and pace yourself, right? You start the application now, you walk away, and you do it again tomorrow. You do something slowly but surely, and then importantly, guys, make sure that you're communicating the essence of your business, right? Sometimes people have a tendency of talking about everything in the business. No, don't talk about everything. Talk about the main thing, right? And focus on what the main thing is about, right? So that's what we're really good at, is that we've kind of like double dived on the niche of. I'm not trying to serve. We're not trying to be everything for everyone, and you must sort of like angle your application to what the purpose of the competition is, right? So if a competition is about let's say maybe some sustainable development goals, SDGs, or then you need to align your sort of like application and how you put it to align to a certain SDG or couple or several, right? If you're applying for something that they want to have impact in townships, or they want to have impact into certain maybe youth or something, you need to angle it that way. And if you feel like you're not angling it that way, then maybe, and you're finding it difficult, maybe that competition is not for you. Don't waste your energy. Move on, right? So, and then another thing is that you need to get through these applications. You're gonna get rejected maybe 4 times out of 5 times, but that one time you get it, you just need to get it once, right? And as the guy said earlier on, is that you need to get funding according to the stage of your business. You can't apply to get VC funding and approach, let's say, a 4DI Capital or an Ethos or a private equity firm whilst you're still in an ideation phase. So you need to look for competitions that sort of like are giving you those 50,000 rands, 100,000 rands for ideas. Then after that, you need to look for those ones that are looking for seed, right? And then after, so that's how you align. So if you can align the stage of your business and then align it with the purpose of the fund and align it to what you're doing, half the job is done. Half the job is done. So that's, I feel like what has set us apart is that we really angled in on we try to match our purpose with the purpose of the fund, and then you just get the job done, guys. There's no other way.
I like that. that getting the job done, being ready and prepared is very, very important. And I think something very key that you mentioned is that communication. So communicating what you do, why it's important, your niche in a way that the investor understands and something that they can relate to. I do want to open, I'm very aware that we are running close to our hour time. So I do want to invite Nero. I know he had to drop off, but perhaps if he could briefly share, take us through a bit of his journey and his experience in the financing journey. And if there are any questions in the chat, once Nero's done with that, we can pose it to some of the panelists and then wrap up the session, not go too far over time this evening. So if you are able to, Nero, can you maybe share just a little bit of what you're going to present, and you can share your presentation in the wrap up now, but if you could take us through your financing journey. Thanks.
Maybe I'll abandon the presentation for today, and just talk. Maybe similar to Francois, we went through the first stage of the competitions, and I know that, depending on which school of thoughts, you subscribe to, there's some people that are very anti-competitions. They believe that, if you're a true entrepreneur, you should just be finding a way to make money. But the reality is that every business needs capital, and there are different sources, and competitions at the beginning are a very good way of making sure that you can get through the pilot stage, the prototyping stage. I think for us, we were quite lucky. Actually, no, I take that statement back. We worked really hard to get lucky. So we were able to, the first competition that we won was through the SAB Foundation and Gibbs, where they were looking for ideas that have social impact relevance. And that first sort of point led us into building a prototype of our solution. From building a prototype, we entered another competition that was like R1 million. And that R1 million helped us effectively finance the first pilot at the first clinic. And that helped us build a physical manifestation of this idea that served people on a daily basis. And second to that, we were then able to start getting the clients themselves to finance the operations of our entity. So we were able to get the city of Tshwane and the city of Johannesburg at that time to be able to, procure our service and our solutions. And that often enough, when you have that product market fit and your client is effectively paying for your solution, like that's the golden thread. That's the one thing that we all aspire to and desire. And I think if you can get that part right, that's definitely worthwhile. We went the route of, and I think, you similar to what was said now, it's about the quantums of the funding that you're raising. You go from R1 million, you go to like 2 million rand, and, you might get a couple of funds that will give you two. And then you start to realize that actually, I now need to, for me to grow this organization, and just for context, right? So we had to grow the number of clinics that we operate in from the first 4 sites to, at the moment, we're operating across 86 communities across KZN, across Gauteng, and across Northwest, and plus minus reaching about 38,000 patients per month that are using these digital lockers that we've created. And I started to realize that, and I know it sounds wrong, but you start to realize that when your organization has grown, a 2 million rand fund doesn't actually do too much for your organization when your actual need as a business is to raise 10 million, 15 million, whatever that case is. And I think this context of raise the capital that is relevant for the stage that you're at is underplayed, and it is very important. And I think maybe one more point about our journey is that, last year we reached a stage where we're like, actually, we're so confident in this business model that we can effectively go for debt. And obviously debt has the advantage that it's a little bit easier to get than pure equity finance. And I think depending on the business model, if you're able to break even faster, if you're able to make sure that your revenue covers your operational costs, it does give you as a founder the high degree of confidence that you need to be able to look at an instrument such as debt as an approach. And I think when you get to, let's say, the 5 million, the 10 million mark, rand, sorry, you start to also realize that there are enterprise development funds that will give you some degree of debt, where you'll get, let's say, 5 years or 10 years, depending on who you're getting it from, at interest free, that enables you to be able to grow and scale up that organization. But to echo a couple of points that Francois had talked about is, your funders are your partners. They are probably maybe your third most important partner after your client or the user that you're serving, and to a large extent, the team that is delivering that particular service, or your colleagues. And your funders become a very strong lubricant of your ability to scale that impact. I know that we're out of time. Maybe I'll just, those would have been my quick sort of points that I would have wanted everybody here to walk away with. It is very important that one commits to the fact that fundraising is an actual process. It is a function within a business. It's not something that you just do by the way, on the side, when you realize that you don't have enough money on the bank. For us, you arrive at a point where you're become very religious about your runway. And your runway is king, because it will determine whether you are in business or out of business. And to a large extent, having enough money in the bank enables you to attract other funders, which is a horrible reality. But like whenever we go fundraising, one of the first lines that we indicate is, what is our runway, and more importantly, how healthy is it? And all of a sudden, it does create those levels of confidence in those funders, to be able to say this organization is financially good. And I do believe that, as a founder yourself, you go through the different stages of learning how to raise debt. As a Black South African, where, sometimes we have a very strong aversion to debt because of how we are brought up. But all of a sudden you start to realize that actually it is a very, very good instrument for growth. It does give you some degree of control that maybe equity doesn't, especially it also gives you an ability not necessarily to raise the wrong type of capital from the wrong people, and it allows you to be able to have the runway that you need to find the right funder. And I think as a social enterprise, one has to be true to that mission. For instance, we will engage with funders that are very, very clear that they want us to go serve the higher LSMs of our country. And, the funder will share their worldview around the fact that they believe in diversification. They believe the fact that, within healthcare, private healthcare pays more. But there is a reality that, that those beliefs continue to perpetuate inequality and exclusion to a large extent. And that, there is a lot more need to continue building solutions that operate in townships without necessarily having to only operate in centers of this world. And I think that mission, that theory of change, that impact reporting is the lifeblood, is also a very, very big function of fundraising. Your impact report is, yes, it's for yourself, for you to be able to learn and internalize all of these reflections. But to a large extent, it is the sweet story that you're telling to your funders, for them to be able to say, hell yeah, let's go on another 4 years with you, another 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mia. That's very, very, very insightful. And I love what you said about working hard to get lucky. I don't think luck comes along every day or very easily. So that's a very, we're just working hard to get where you need to be. I think we had one question in the chat about asking for resources beyond money, and thank you very much, Yusuf, for swiftly answering that in the chat. And that sometimes those resources are actually have a bigger impact than just funding. But if there aren't any other questions from the floor, be it in the chat or if you want to raise your hand, I do want to just quickly thank the panelists that have joined us today. Thank you, Tina, thank you, Yusuf, thank you, Mika, and of course, thank you, Mira, as well for your presentation. And I'm sure we can share the presentation via the mailer so that everybody can see it as well. And like we said at the beginning, we had a couple of Bertha Scholars that were joining us today, and I think you can see the good work that they're doing. And just to highlight that the Bertha Centre funds students to study at the UCT GSB, and that scholarship applications are now open for the M4 program as well as the MBA program. And the link for that, for more information, will be provided in the chat as well. And then one last bit of information. Yes, it's just that. Sorry, just that the link to the scholarship information and application is in the chat at the moment. So if you're looking for more information, or if you want any information further than what's on the website, you can feel free to reach out to us. So once again, thank you to our presenters and our panelists, and everybody in the room for joining us this afternoon. I hope you found it very insightful, and you got some golden nuggets of information to help you on your journey. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.